Gosh, was this fun to do because of recent headlines where one of Terry Pratchett's Discworld books is being added to the Penguin Random House Classics line. I decided to pick up said book and give it a reread here and review on the channel. For those of you who don't know, a while ago I was planning on going through and reviewing every single Discworld book, but I made a critical mistake where I pretty much binged the entire series in audiobook format, just in a blind go through without taking many notes and not really sectioning out them in my mind. So when it came to sit down and record reviews, I couldn't distinguish shit. So this was a wonderful opportunity for me to jog my memory on one of Terry Pratchett's best works, Night Watch, and answer the question that a couple headlines claimed: is Night Watch the best Discworld book? I've said many times on the record my personal favorite that stands out even among the miasmic mass that I consumed is Going Postal. And so I was kind of in my head comparing this to that during my reading experience. But before we get into what that experience was like, let's talk about what Night Watch is about. It follows one of the most universally popular and loved Discworld characters, Sam Vimes, who in the original timeline, yes, this is a time travel story, is captain of the City Watch, a respected man who is very class conscious, feels like a traitor, but does a damn good job of his job. He's kind of the ultimate authority in Discworld that you can respect because he does his duty, yet is so hesitant to embrace all of the power. He is this incorruptible, grumpy old coot who adds so much soul and vitality to the city guard through his grumpy, honest humanity. He's got some contradictions, but who doesn't? And that's why I kind of went back and remembered Night Watch as being like a really good time before my reread, but also thinking like it stood out as a bit strange for a Sam Vimes story, and wasn't one that I remember during my original listening being something that like defined Sam Vimes for me. That was a huge mistake, because the actual story here, to just clarify what I said, in initiating incidents, we see Sam Vimes after a murderous criminal in the opening, but through a strange accident ends up getting sent back in time, changing the course of history and resulting in the death of his original mentor, who sent him on the path of being the great captain of the watch he is. And it's actually because of the criminal he was chasing coming back in time with him and killing the mentor that was so foundational to shaping his character. But Vimes being Vimes, he decides to take on that role because of some intervention as well, and he ends up joining the City Watch once again, not as a captain, but a sergeant of the arms, which is fascinating, because this is now a story of Sam Vimes entering the guards. Well, he was also there, so we have Sam Vimes, and then Vimes taking on the identity of his mentor, Keel, and mentoring himself, while also trying to button up and have the same impact on the guard that this person did. And that is a great twist on a concept we've seen before. There's a whole bunch of stories out there about people interacting with future and past versions of themselves to varying levels of success, but this is Terry Pratchett taking it on, which means he's going to milk every single opportunity as aggressively as he can to pull out meaning, observations on society and humanity, while being damn funny while doing it. And I think a very clear and easy to access example of this is the fact that when Sam Vimes joins up with the Night Watch in the past and now creating this alternate timeline, he does so as a sergeant. He doesn't come in and he has to act as like a beat cop. There's a level of authority and experience to him where he's able to lie his way into another position of authority, which, if you know Sam Vimes' character, makes complete sense. He is the embodiment of just vibes getting him through the check. He is to his core, to the point where people who are just meeting him in the street go, "Are you city guard? Because you reek of city guard." And something I forgot to say here about why it's such a good decision is it allows Sam Vimes to take on an authority role and kind of exert his experience on cops that are below him, night watchmen, I should say, or just city guards. And that kind of brings all the themes together, where Vimes is coming back in time, but not as a young man, and instead as someone who knows the future of the city, knows how things need to be fixed, and now it's his responsibility to get them there. So we actually get to see him just flooded with agency and able to affect the Watch in the way he wants to, despite not being the captain or eventual commander role he takes on. But there's two things kind of keeping the character of Vimes and you as the reader grounded in this past timeline, rather than the constant need of Vimes going home. Through that intervention I mentioned before, Vimes knows he has to take on a certain role in this past for the timeline to not be jiggered with. And he also knows he needs to capture the ruthless criminal he brought back in time that has now joined up with the corrupt evil ruler of Ankh-Morpork during this time. So like, yeah, there's bad people, it's a darker time for the city, and we're taking someone who has helped make the capital city a better place to this time so that he can have a similar effect that his mentor did during that time, being one of the pivotal people of change. It's a beautiful mix and also kind of tragic. Obviously, there are people who actually die pretty horribly in this Discworld book due to political turmoil happening within the city, change of leadership, a bit of a rebellion going on. All of these themes coming into play to making Night Watch be one of the most emotionally impactful stories I think Discworld has had in terms of going a bit darker, talking about loss. But it's necessary and doesn't feel out of place for Discworld because the larger themes of Night Watch were clearly focused from Terry Pratchett on the concepts of the past impacting the future, which, like, sounds like the most obvious thing ever, right? You just heard me say that and go, well, yes, but it's more nuanced because this is specifically asking you to take a more meditative look at history and how, yeah, on like a wide scheme, it can shape a city. But the city is only a reflection of Vimes himself. There's a reason Vimes needs to be a bit gruff, be a bit harder, even though he is someone who is from the better part, like the better time for this capital city. There was struggle and strife to get there, and there are all these scenes of senior Vimes talking to a, I think, 30 or 40 year younger version of himself, and he's imparting these lessons of wisdom, and there's such a contrast between their characters. You meet a Vimes who Pratchett super successfully makes feel like just another cop who has not had the weight of the world dumped on them to end up where Sam Vimes does. And that is what it means to have that theme of the impact of history. It's the juxtaposition of the young guard versus the jaded captain, the city in strife, the hard work that needs to get done to clean up, and how that's always not pretty. To get to a brighter future, sometimes you have to go through darker times. Violence can sometimes not be avoided and instead needs to be contained, mitigated against. And then the bad players rarely go out without trying to destroy or damage as much as they can. And it's about trying as a good person to not sink to their level, but mitigate the fallout from their fall. And there's also this like underlying theme, because Terry Pratchett is always trying to put in observations about us as people, the wider experience of being a sentient individual in a society. And one of the things he's trying to say about that is people as a whole, as a collective, we don't like change. Unless things go horribly wrong, we typically just want to go about our lives. It's part of this strange part of like the political side of society, right? If everyone was engaged, that would be great. But getting everyone engaged is rather difficult. And unless something impedes your just day-to-day existence, people tend to actually not be on the side of revolutionaries, even if they may agree with some of their policies, some of their like desires for the future, because a cost is something that people are always going to be afraid of. And something new is scary. And it's when things get really bad that you start to see actual like waking up and movement. And again, I just want to put in here, I'm actually not trying to make any commentary about like modern day stuff. I picked up this book because of Penguin Random House, and there just happens to be some parallels that people are obviously going to see to modern stuff. Project your own things all you want. This is not me trying to be allegorical. This is me reviewing the clear themes in this book, which takes me to talking about the character of Sam Vimes on like the wider perspective of the City Watch series and just his place in Discworld, because it seems like this book could be fairly removed from the overall like City Watch arc, and you're not entirely wrong. But I would say experiencing this specific story is absolutely integral if you want to have a full, well-rounded view of Sam Vimes as a character. What he experiences and goes through feels like both a beautiful cap, a cherry on top to so much of the defining of the character we've gotten so far. Having this juxtaposition of him to past and then to now gives you this well-rounded view, but it also feels like he is in the perfect place now to handle these things. We are seeing a probably most on top of his game Sam Vimes to date in Discworld, coming in up against his biggest challenge. And while it's not the most impactful on the wider, broader story of the Discworld, the story of Discworld is the characters, no question. It's a character-focused series, and while it might not impact the world events because a lot of this story is about trying to put things back where they need to be, it's fundamental, foundational to understanding Sam Vimes, and I would argue, therefore, Discworld itself. And it couldn't not be, because traveling back in time, there is the evil Ankh-Morpork. Consider it the bad versus the good. The city, as I said, that shaped Sam Vimes, and that layers into all different aspects of the story, where you have the bad leader, his secret police, a more paranoid, more racist, just rougher city for Sam Vimes to be exploring in. And so it feels in some ways like his greatest challenge yet, because he also is a fish out of water and alone taking all of that on. And yet, because Terry Pratchett's Terry Pratchett, the way the story progresses makes complete sense. How Vimes learns subtly and changes a bit, but is also just displaying his experience from beginning to end is so addicting. There's also this beautiful development of Vimes' character that seems so antithetical to who he is to his core, but so earned specifically within Night Watch, where Vimes, from our first introduction to him as a character, is this anti-bureaucratic person who's super class conscious and does not necessarily want to be a part of the system. Yet there's this beautiful moment in Night Watch where the city is in jeopardy and he's worrying about all of the bureaucratic angles to it. Who's making sure the food's going to arrive? The systems don't begin to break down in a tumbling effect that takes it all into a hole. And that's kind of the balanced nuance of Terry Pratchett, where he is someone who understands the working class man is bothered by taxes, but also knows he's not an idiot. These things are necessary. And it's that whole well-rounded view of existence that informs his character at the center of the spotlight of this story so well. The signature humor is here. I found myself snickering at multiple points within Night Watch, but this might be, it's probably not like overall, but at least to fresh memory, the grimmest Discworld book I can think of. And on that same note of it kind of almost being a standalone like Small Gods or many other Discworld books that kind of, I wouldn't actually say to do Night Watch on its own. You need to read some of the City Watch series first, but then I would say it's a wonderful, almost standalone, like Cap in Stone, though I don't know the exact order you're supposed to read them. I'll have it up on screen now. It's standalone for Discworld fans. It is not standalone in the same sense that I would argue like Small Gods is. But there's this end note to everything Sam Vimes is a part of, where yeah, he is witnessing historic things happening and is doing his best to make sure the good future that he wants is still going to take place, but he's not able to solve every problem. And where he ends up kind of being pulled back, like spoiler warning, yeah, Sam Vimes doesn't end up trapped in the past forever. Sorry if that's a huge, shocking spoiler to you in a Discworld book, and a book that came out 22 years ago. And so you kind of get left with this note of there's still a lot of struggle to happen before the city, the capital Ankh-Morpork we all know and love, is able to grow and flourish. But that's the long arc of justice, right? It's not about just one victory that wins the day and sets everything right. It's about individuals doing the best they can in whatever circumstances they're in to make a better future. And that's all you can really ask of anybody. And it's all that's being asked of Sam Vimes here, and the character he is absolutely steps up and delivers. But is it the best Discworld book? Not for me. It's in probably my top 5 upon reread, but not my top 3. I'm still going to say my favorite is another standalone you can kind of just pick up on its own and consume, and that is going to be Going Postal. But I'm also just partial to civil servant stories, and I have a weird love of the Postal Service specifically. And if I had one criticism of this, something I have noticed the more I have gone back to Discworld, Terry Pratchett has a problem where sub-characters in his stories often rely on caricature over characterization, meaning they'll just have like a quirk and a weird personality that kind of ends up blending with a whole bunch of other kind of minor characters that have a quirk and a weirder personality, and there's not as much tact and not as much nuance as you get from other authors. Though, with how brief this book is, it would kind of be an unrealistic expectation for everyone you meet to be a super fleshed out, like, Wheel of Time level character. While we're getting into criticisms, though, I do want to say there's a specific assassination beat in the climax of the book that feels structurally like it kind of ends up messing with the pacing. It just goes on a bit too long, and there's a few jokes that actually feel kind of out of place due to how tense this Discworld book is becoming. I don't normally have that to say about Discworld, but I do here, surprisingly. Fortunately, though, this is made up for by the fact that the final confrontation and going back in time between Vimes and Karsa is beautiful in terms of how he's able to overcome some few potential flaws that may exist within him. And then the final beats of Vimes kind of having this full circle moment where he's become his own hero, literally been the example that he wanted to be as a new cop, makes this whole book feel like a celebration of Sam Vimes, but not in a pretentious way, in a very well-earned, just cathartic conclusion to the character. And I can never not love seeing a character I have adored for so long getting the honors they deserve with an author like Terry Pratchett at the wheel. Overall, though, I'm giving Night Watch an easy 9 out of 10. Are you kidding me? It's probably the best Sam Vimes story, period, and starts throwing with some of my favorite death books and going postal. Of course, it's at least a 9. It's a strong, solid 9 out of 10, and I would say something that, especially if you've already read Guards, is a must pick up now. But this has just been my latest book review here on the channel. Stay tuned for Fury of the Gods coming next, and I also have an interview with John Gwynn dropping soon as well. If you'd like to see Kayla and I watching the Buffy the Vampire Slayer 1992 movie, go ahead and join the Patreon for $1, and you get that as well as chapters from my upcoming books and a bunch of other bonus content like me reviewing a piano I hated. That's fun. Anyway, y'all, have a great one. Peace!